I spearheaded the effort for the marquee restoration.
So we bought the building, remodeled it. Looks nothing like it used to.
The ugliest Christmas sweater I've ever seen.
Me too.
I don't have Christina to tell me what podcast we're on, but I put 36 down. It may be 37, but we're sticking to February, kind of that nonprofit guest profile here. And I put this down as celebrity Sybil, obviously. Everyone, if you're in North Iowa, you're going to know who Sybil is. She's been running the Humane Society in North Iowa for, she'll tell you, for, I believe, a number of years. I've worked with her at times, at least through the news, not necessarily one-on-one, but through the news at my time at Key IMT. And she has certainly been on the television quite a bit as well. So we're going to bring her on. And of course, we'll find out kind of her background, and most people are going to know who you are. Welcome to the program, Sybil.
Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Wonderful. How are things in 2022 for you guys?
Well, things are looking good.
Real good? Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, there's always a struggle, I think, in your area, right? I mean, being the executive director of the Humane Society, but also I think there's obviously the new struggle involved as well as we're slowly getting out of this pandemic. What are some of the things that have been working for you guys during the pandemic, and what are some things that you guys are maybe somewhat working on or working through?
Well, I mean, to be honest, pandemic times were tough for us. We really struggled through COVID. Thankfully, though, in the 2-year period, we're coming up on 2 years since we kind of started feeling the effects of COVID in North Iowa. We haven't had any employees that have been out ill due to COVID or have had COVID. With one employee who recently had it and stayed home and got better. But, you know, we survived the whole ordeal without any illness amongst our staff, which is really amazing. And
that's huge. I mean, you don't hear that ever.
No, and we have, 22, 23 members of our staff. But I'll tell you, from day one, when, COVID first came around our area and there was a lot of unknowns and there's a lot of uncertainty and kind of a lot of fears about it too, about what could happen. I'll tell you, my staff and I, we all rallied around and said, listen, our priority is going to be making sure that the animals that are in our shelter, that our care for them never goes to the wayside. We need to make sure that we have staff here every day, like they depend on us, And so everybody just realized the importance of staying healthy, staying diligent, and, practicing safe and good protocols in order so that we could always be there for the animals. And I'll tell you, throughout this entire 2 years, we have not wavered at all in the ability and the quantity of care, the quality of care that we provide to the shelter animals, which has been the positive of all of this. The negatives, of course, like any nonprofit, we weren't able to have any in-person fundraising events in the last 2 years. And, nonprofits like me, we rely on those events for community support, for obviously monetary reasons. So that's been the struggle of pandemic times.
I am interested. When I was at my time, when I lived in Las Vegas, I did a little bit of volunteering at some of the animal shelters, which for some reason and maybe it's a little bit more pronounced, I guess, in some of the bigger communities, especially I felt like Las Vegas had their own unity around pets and making sure there's awareness. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen in North Iowa or anything like that, but I was just shocked by beyond the Humane Society, all these different entities that are out there. So my question to you is, I've always been interested in it. How did you end up in this career? Is it always something that you were passionate about, animals, wanting to make the difference in a cat or a dog or whomever, whatever animal it is, their life? Or is it just something you stumbled upon?
Definitely my calling to be a voice for animals and to be a voice for those that don't have one. And I always envisioned myself, being a voice for something greater than myself, whether it be humans or animals or a cause that I believe in. And it took me a while to find the right path. I grew up in a political home. My parents were in politics in various things. And I honestly thought that I would be a politician. I thought that I'd run for public office.
You could do well. I think you could do really. And maybe some point that's going to be your calling, Sybil. I mean, everyone knows who you are.
I I've been in a kennel, in a lot of animal kennels before, and cleaned a lot of litter boxes. And let me tell you, politics is dirtier than that.
Really is.
I think I'd rather stick to litter boxes.
Yeah.
But, and that was in the 80s and the 90s, when things were a lot different than they are now. But so, that was the career path that I thought that I was going to be on, is elected office. But, as I got to be more, involved, I worked in the legislature for a few years. I was a procurement manager for a free range hog operation. So I was a hog buyer and these are like free range, all natural hogs. So it's kind of like, it's not an animal welfare issue, except that it is, if we're going to eat meat, we need to do so. And we should be raising our meat in a respectful way. And the company I worked for did that. And that was really an important thing to me. And that's when I really first started feeling like the desire to have a career path that was something I was passionate about and could be a voice. And so, in that sense, it was like animal welfare in agriculture practices and environmental impacts and things like that. But then when the opportunity came up for me to apply for the executive director's job with the Humane Society, which, by the way, yesterday with the organization. So
I knew it was, I thought I heard 12, but I may have heard 12 when I was at KIMT. So
yeah,
I'm not surprised that you're at 14 years and maybe another 14 years, right?
Oh boy. Well, that I don't think I would love for somebody to put us out of business. I would love for there not to be a need for our services, but unfortunately, I think there always will be. And so I'll be around. But when this opportunity came up, the Humane Society was in a much different position, and with this really small, drafty shelter on the north end of Mason City, it was an old vet's office. It lacked a lot of the things that we needed. And, the board of directors for the organization and other volunteers had gotten the ball rolling on getting some land donated and, trying to raise money for the building and, looking at plans to launch a capital campaign. And then when I came on board in February of 2008, that was really my first job, was to raise $1 million and build a new building. And it wasn't that easy, of course. And it wasn't me that did it. It was like a whole host of people and a whole team and community of people that, put their money where their mouth was in how they support animals and wanted to help us achieve our dream of building this new shelter. And so that's kind of where my journey began, was getting out there right away and have a unifying message of our organization to the community, to our supporters, to the media, to make sure that people knew what our story was and what our goals are as an organization. And so here I am 14 years later, still, singing the same tune, kind of.
So walk us through back when you guys started fundraising for that new building. What was that like? I mean, I've been around fundraising, probably not to that capacity, looking for $1 million from the community. But what was the process like from the very first step of the idea until the ribbon cutting and the opening?
Well, so I came in at a time where I got to reap a lot of the rewards of the predecessors before me, the board of directors, the board president, a lot of volunteers, and people before me had already begun the groundwork. One of my dear friends and a mentor for me, and the first executive director of the Humane Society, was Estelle Gable. She was a lifelong Mason Cityan, and she was just involved in every nonprofit in Mason City. She had a hand in it in some way. She just was really involved in things, and she was the first executive director of the Humane Society. I don't know exactly what years, but it was before my time. She is the one that initially got the ball rolling with procuring a donation of land for the McNider family. They donated 7 acres of land for us out on South Birch Drive along the Winnebago River. She got an architect involved, and then the groundwork started being laid. At the same time, the city of Mason City was operating a stray animal shelter, that all the stray animals that are picked up in Mason City were taken to this stray shelter. It was operated by a veterinarian in town that they contracted with. It was in a Morton shed off of Carolina Avenue. I can't remember the exact address, but it suffered the same kind of issues that our old shelter suffered on the north end. Lack of space, lack of ventilation, lack of parking, lack of visibility, all the things. And so before my time, again, our board of directors and our board president approached the city and said, hey, we got 7 acres of land donated. why don't you guys build a state-of-the-art $1 million shelter as well, and then contract with us to manage it for you? And so, just a few meetings later, that happened.
Just a few.
Just a few. And again, thankfully, I was hired after all that groundwork was laid. So I didn't have to sit through those meetings. But I'm really grateful for the people that did, and it created the path to this really wonderful relationship that we have with the city of Mason City. They did end up building a 3,600 square foot building on our property. We share a roof line together. They were able to build theirs a year prior to ours because we needed to raise the money first. And so combined, though, we have about 12,000 square feet between the two facilities. It's one roof line, but it is two separate shelters. And then the Humane Society, we manage the city shelter. And so we facilitate reclaims of stray animals. We facilitate adoptions, and then we provide direct care, obviously, to all the animals. But, this relationship was forming on paper with the city, and all of that was working well. In the meantime, though, we had to raise $1 million for our project, our side of things. And so we launched a capital campaign on June 1st, 2008. And I don't think that you were in the area at that time. That was quite a long time ago.
Yep.
You were probably still in high school, right?
That's very kind of you to say.
Yeah, you got it. But anybody else in North Iowa will remember that, we launched our campaign on June 1st. But then what happened the first week of June 2008? The 100-year flood, that flooded out Mason City and actually flooded out the road that led out to our shelter. And
wow,
we had to just pause and stop everything because members of our staff and our board and volunteers were part of the FEMA's emergency management rescue response team for animals. And so we set up a different location out at the fairgrounds to house any animals that were being evacuated out of flood homes, where their owners were going into shelters like churches, Red Cross, other places where they couldn't take their pets. And, the thing that I think we see when these kind of environmental impact things happen in different communities and ours as well, there are some people that say, when police are evacuating people's homes and saying, your home is going underwater and you may die. If they say, if I can't take my pet, I'm not leaving. And, we had that happen. Like, people do not want to leave their pets behind, thankfully. But so we set up a temporary shelter out at the fairgrounds, and they were kind enough to let us use the All Seasons building. Again, local people will be familiar with this huge, ginormous All Seasons building. But they required us, since there was live animals there, they required us to man it 24 hours a day, during this time of rescue. So all in all, we rescued and helped remove and set up a temporary shelter for 63 animals. It included a bird and lots of dogs and kitties, and then a litter of kittens that were plucked out of the floodwaters and were very hissy and not nice and not happy. But we all had to take a turn, in this ginormous room with 63 other animals. And I took my turn, and there was this little weeder dog named Frank. God bless him. He was blind and deaf and kind of scared. His owners weren't there. Mm-hmm. And all night long, it was, arf, arf, arf. Well, he had this sweet little bark, but it made every other dog. And let me tell you, so they all had this very loud conversation all night long, and it was the worst slumber party I've ever been to, hands down. The worst.
You obviously didn't get any sleep that night, did you?
Gosh, no. I tried to like console Frank and hold him and cuddle him, and he just, he's an older dog and couldn't be consoled. But everybody made it through, including myself. And all the animals their owners came and got them, and some within a few days, and some it took a little bit longer for them to secure housing. Mm-hmm. But all the animals got back to where they belonged, and that meant we could get our capital campaign back on track. But still, like, North Iowa was just recovering from this major event, and catastrophic event. And there was also some other big projects going on in the state of Iowa, or in Mason City, I'm sorry. The Frank Lloyd Wright Hotel restoration project was going on. And so we're kind of competing with these really large, bigger projects in the community. But in a matter of just a few weeks after the flood, we had a donor step forward and offer us a substantial gift, a matching gift of $500,000. And they said for every dollar we raised, they'd match it up to that $500,000 mark. So we want to take full advantage of this. And so, of course, we, put it out there everywhere in the media and on social media and, everywhere we could. And I'll tell you, I had people calling me from airports, from from on the deadline day to say, did I make it? Did I make it? Am I getting my donation in? And people stepped up, and the end of July is when the deadline for this matching grant opportunity was. By the end of July, we had successfully raised that $500,000 and then some. And so we were able to collect the full $500,000 offer of the matching grant opportunity. So all in all, we launched on June 1st. We had to take about a 2-week break to do flood management and animal management. And then we ended in the end of July. So over the course of like a 6-week period, we managed to raise $1.2 million. And that was what we needed to build our shelter. And I mean, it was just a really unbelievable, I still look back on it and think, I can't believe that, that we had that many people be so generous and love their animals so much and step up like that for us. And I'm just so humbled by it and grateful.
So I worked in a lot of different TV markets. I've lived in a lot of locations. And I remember when I came here to take the job at KIMT, and so many people that were either at the station or people that I got to know said, what, if you're a good person and, you stick around for a while, North Iowa will embrace you. And they've embraced me. They've embraced my new company. And I can see completely why they would embrace that kind of situation. So, I mean, not only is it hats off to North Iowa, but I mean, all the work you guys did, the shelter, obviously, you said you were involved. So, I mean, that's pretty amazing. I want to ask you this. Everyone thinks of shelters as, all right, dogs and cats are there. We can, obviously, the number one goal is to be able to place them in homes.
Mm-hmm.
What else is there outside of the Humane Society that, you guys do for the public? I mean, yes, that's a huge piece of it. That's why you guys are there. But what else? I mean, it's not just cats and dogs and placement in homes, which is obviously a huge deal. But,
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, we're a resource for the community in a lot of ways for, people that have to release an animal to us because their situation changes. There's animals that have been neglected or abandoned. We work with law enforcement agencies, local and, in other counties, to take in animals that have been abandoned or neglected or abused in their communities. So, we act as a resource for a lot of different people in a lot of different ways. We also try to provide a lot of educational resources. And again, in normal times, like COVID times, it's been different because we've been kind of like in a state of lockdown because we want to keep everybody safe, but now we're hoping to get back out there again. But we do a lot of educational opportunities too, of like going into classrooms and talking about dog bite prevention and safe animal handling practices. I do a lot of speaking engagements to like Rotary clubs and Lions clubs and things like that, and just awareness about what we do. We also do a lot of advocating. We are, first and foremost, like you said, an adoption agency. We're not any political organization, and I don't care what party you are in. I mean, I think anybody can agree, it doesn't matter what party you're in, people love pets, they love their pets. But, in Iowa, there's a lot of legislative issues that involve domestic animals. And so, we try to speak out on behalf of animals in those issues and just give people some resources to make their own opinion, of course, but to provide them, information if they want to take action and help us become a voice for animals. So we do a lot of awareness on Iowa's animal cruelty laws. The code is 717B, and that's where it tells out like abuse, neglect, those kind of charges. So we advocate for that kind of information, but then also the puppy mill issue. Iowa has a pretty major puppy mill problem because we're so rural and our laws are so, kind of lax about puppy mills and breeders. And there's, people always say, well, how do you constitute, what's your definition of a puppy mill? Like a breeder is the same as a puppy mill. Well, I mean, to me, a puppy mill is a term that no breeder wants to be labeled as, because it, kind of insinuates that they're like a factory of dogs. But that is kind of the definition. When people ask me, I'm looking to buy a dog from such and such breeder, are they a puppy mill? And I say, well, reasonably, how many dogs do you think a person should be able to take care of and provide care to if they're wanting to breed and sell dogs? And their answer might be like, I don't know, 6, 7. Well, there's a lot of breeders, especially in the North Iowa area, they might have 200 to 300 dogs that they're breeding. And that is, to me, not a place where they're looking out for the welfare and of the animal and trying to breed the best characteristics of the breed. When people the definition for me is any breeder that puts wealth over welfare is, to me, labeled a puppy mill. So we try to bring a lot of awareness to that issue and help people, make good choices when they're adding a four-legged a pet to their family. We're not the only option. We hope that people choose the adoption option, but there's lots of other options out there. So we just want people to make, smart decisions and research what they're doing. I'm sidetracking here, but that's a lot of what we do is education, advocacy, resources. We've been directly involved in several large-scale puppy mill rescues. The big one was the Samoyed rescue that a lot of people are still familiar with.
Yep.
But we've done others in Nashua and Charles City area. And so, there's really no like box that I could outline and say, this is what we do, check, 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 because we kind of do whatever we have to do to help animals in need where we can.
That brings up another point. How far do you guys reach to help? So, is this a county by county base? Is this, say, we'll help anyone in North Iowa?
We aren't always the answer to every problem out there. I get calls probably once a week from people that say, I've got, 10 cats living under my deck. Can you come capture them and take them? I'm sorry, I don't have the room, or I've got, my neighbor's got dogs chained up in their backyard and they're not taking care of them. Can you come get them? I don't have the authority to do that. Like, my organization doesn't have law enforcement authorities. And so you have to go through the channels of law enforcement in those kind of situations. But as far as where we help, we say we're a resource in North Iowa, but, really, again, we help where we can. Like, we've, done a lot of things and helped with animals in Minnesota and North Iowa area, but, we adopt to all over the country, and even internationally. We've adopted dogs into Canada before. And so, we don't really put a boundary around ourselves, but we know what our realistic limitations are. Like, we can't take in hundreds of animals and then not have the resources to care for them. So, we do what we can with the intention of doing it well.
People. So we talked a lot about dogs and organization, around the community within, but obviously you guys have a smaller staff because you're a nonprofit. You guys are looking for volunteers. Mm-hmm. Talk about the volunteerism that is needed at the Humane Society. Obviously you guys are looking for volunteers always, correct? And what it takes to be a volunteer.
So again, COVID has put a real wrench in things for us. For some time there, we had periods of time during this last 2 years where we've been fully open to the public, other times where we've been fully closed to the public, other times, and throughout all of this, we've always done adoptions. And sometimes it's by appointment only, and you have to have a pre-approved application in. And then there was other periods where we did volunteer by appointment, where you could make an appointment and come in, so that we could control and manage the number of people in the building at a time. And that was more about COVID restrictions. Well, now, in the last couple of months, things have lightened up a little bit everywhere. However, we've been dealing with a major staff shortage since September. We had 5 members of our staff that were college kids. Well, one was a college professor, and then the other 4 were college students that were either graduating high school and going off to school, or had been returned to us for the summer and going back in the fall. So we had 5 vacancies in our kennel staff, which again, these are the direct animal caretakers that we rely on daily. And in normal times, we'd be like, okay, well, we got 5 positions to fill, put out the, we're hiring sign, and no problem, we'll be able to fill it. Well, not this year. Everybody in town was hiring, and everybody increase their hiring wage. You saw, the local fast food joints are paying $15, $16 an hour. Some of them, the grocery stores, the big box stores, as a nonprofit that is labor heavy, we can't afford to compete with that. We're not paying that kind of wage. However, we pay a smaller wage, but we also pay with a lot of kitten cuddles and puppy kisses. And that's worth, you can't put a price on that, Yeah. But we struggle with the staff shortages, and the impact that it had on us was that, if we were low on kennel staff, that meant our customer service staff and myself and our shelter manager, we had to fill that void and kennel the animals, clean their kennels, and that meant there was nobody at the front door to greet customers and to welcome them and show them around. And so unfortunately, we have been closed for several months because of that. Now, we are getting things back on track, and I hope to, in the coming weeks, we have some new employees that literally have just started in the last week. We need to get them trained a little bit more to be able to deal with, people coming in and show them the around the building and giving them good information. And so we're hoping in the coming weeks to be announcing that we'll be back open to the public and welcome visitors again, because like you said, we are definitely in need of volunteers. The kind of volunteers we need are people to literally come and walk our dogs and come hang out in our cat rooms and play with our cats.
Events. I want to move on to events because obviously volunteerism is important. Money is important. And the last 2 years, the events have been basically, is there anything that you can see in the future that you guys are going to bring back your events? So I talked to Habitat for Humanity, Melissa, last week, and it sounds like they're going to be putting on their events, their Hammers and Heels. Are you guys going to be back and doing anything instead of virtually or canceled? Are you guys going to go back to your big event? I'm sorry, I can't remember what the big event is called you guys do every year.
The big event that we usually do in the fall is Fall Festival, and we had a plan to do it this last September. We had everything reserved. We had, everything pretty much set up. But then that's when the Delta variant was actually becoming a bigger problem. And I mean, the volunteers that I have that organized that event and helped put it together, we got together and they said, listen, we're the age category that's most at risk here. And, just kind of by like majority vote, it was decided that for their safety and for the public safety, we just didn't feel comfortable doing this large gathering of especially like children and, in a inside area. And it would just have really, I don't know I'd be beside myself if somebody got sick at our event and then it spread, from there. And so at the time it was decided that it was better to just cancel that event again, second year in a row. Mm-hmm. But again, like in recent months, I feel like things in recent weeks, especially, I don't know that COVID is ever going to go away. And we always will have a priority in making sure our staff is safe and healthy and there, for the animals. But we're hoping that, by next fall, we totally want to put on our Fall Festival event. And throughout the summer, there's always a lot of different events that we do, like at the farmers markets and, with some other co-oping events in the community that we're hoping to get back out into the public this summer, because we miss that, we miss the interaction, and so do our animals. And so, there's no, times are different now, and we need to find our new norm. And I think we will, we all have to. But, so long as our animals that are in need will be there. And we always know that there's always going to be people in our community that support and appreciate what we do and will come to our events and show their support and adopt from us and volunteer with us. And, it's that relationship that we have with people that we appreciate and value so much.
Sybil Soukup, she is the executive director of the Humane Society in North Iowa, touching base with me. And one of the questions that I always want to know, and so many people are going to want, tell me some bad stories about something that happened in the you hear a lot of negativity, right? People want to know maybe some of the negative stories. Do you have one story, Sybil, that you can remember in your 14 years that still almost brings you to tears with happiness? Is there anything? I mean, there might be one every year that you can remember, maybe even every, twice, 3 times a year. But is there one that really sticks out?
I mean, there's hundreds. I mean, every adoption to me is something that makes me want to cry tears of joy, because this was an animal that was, discarded or displaced or not wanted, and came through our doors, and we were able to find a new ending to their story, a happy ending. Mm-hmm. And so to me, those are always worth the celebrations. But, there are the bad stories. And when those happen, there's a lot of people, when I share these stories online and I'm trying to maybe raise awareness, or, sometimes I need to raise money to help with veterinarian care and bills for an animal in need that's suffering some horrible tragedy. There's a lot of people that go on there and say, eye for an eye, vigilante justice. That's not our MO. Like, that's not how we do things. And, my priority is always, always to make sure that an animal that's been abused and neglected, or, in a horrible situation, that we provide them a stable environment, a sanctuary filled with love and care and comfort. And, if somebody has wronged an animal or broken the law or abused an animal, that's for law enforcement to take care of. My job is to take care of that animal. And, we've had a lot of those stories in our region, in our area over the years. And I think, there's a lot that stand out to me, but one of them that, oh, I'll just never forget it. I mean, there's a lot that I won't forget, but it was like a few days before Christmas. I can't remember what year it was, quite a while, but a guy called and he was on his way home from work over in the Charles City Green area. And he saw something fly out of the window of the car in front of him and kind of rolled on the road and landed in the ditch. And he stopped and checked it out. And it was a dog, a little beagle. And it was thrown out of a vehicle going 55 miles an hour down the highway. And it was bloodied and it was bleeding profusely, but it had just been thrown. So he knew something else was wrong. He wrapped this little dog up in his jacket and called us. And like literally it's, it's closing time. It's right before Christmas, but he calls and says, I just found this dog. Something's really horrible with it. Got, thrown out the window. He said, rush on over, bring it over. And he came over with this little beagle wrapped in his jacket, covered in blood. And I just remember her looking up, at me, and like, I'm getting teary-eyed talking about it again and reminiscing about it. But she just had this look like, save me,
Mm-hmm.
And so like, sorry.
Yeah.
That's what you do. That's what happens when you have a job where you wear your heart on your sleeve. You have tears in your eyes. But, we immediately got our emergency vet care, and somebody had put a gun in this dog's mouth and shot her. And this was not the first dog that this had happened to that we'd taken care of. This was a second dog, and somebody had shot her in the face and in the leg in an attempt to kill her, and it didn't. And they threw her out the window, and then she rolled, out of the car and into the ditch. And this young man, again, scooped her up and brought her to us. And it ended up, she needed to have some jaw reconstruction, surgery, jaw wiring. She had to have her leg amputated that had been shot off. And she had a lot of other issues, that need to be resolved. But I'll tell you, that dog made a full recovery. We named her Hope because it was like a prayer and a hope that she would survive, Yeah. And she did. And she got her forever home. And that dog on 3 legs, she ran faster than any other dog in that home. And, there's a dog that was shot, attempted to be killed, and thrown out of a vehicle. And then she ended up coming into our care and finding just the most beautiful home in life, and that's the kind of stories, like not every story like that we are involved in, not every adoption that we're involved in is traumatic like that. But it's those traumatic ones that are like, oh, thank God we're here. And that's what I always tell my staff when they get teary-eyed or enraged about like, how could someone do this to an animal? Thank God we're here to be a sanctuary for animals like that in those situations. And where else would they go, And so those are the stories. And yes, I do get emotional because I've been a part of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of stories of animals that have come in and then gone out with a new home. And every one of them is important. Everyone matters. And for everyone that tells me, oh God, I got the best dog from you. I'm like, you're right. You did get the best dog, because every dog is the best dog and every cat is the best cat and every guinea pig is the best guinea pig. Yours is the best. And so, that's what always keeps me going, is just being able to provide that happy ending to the animals that depend on us, and then giving the gift of the best pet to a person in our community that adopts from us.
That story was just like, and how many of those stories? Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I want to, like, I remember volunteering in Las Vegas a couple of times, and I had to stop because it bothered me so much. I was taking some of that home, and it kind of made me sad. And then I was looking online, how can I help? And I want to bring all these dogs home. How do you not have a form of, PTSD, or how do you not bring that home? I mean,
well, I'm probably very mentally messed up. I'm sure of it, but long before this job. No, like I am a very emotional person, but I'm also, a person that can see the reality of situations and know what needs to be done. And, the thing that keeps me going, I've been in this job for over 14 years and a day.
Yep.
And in that time, I've only ever brought home 2 animals. And it's the cats that I have now that I wish would make an appearance. I'm at home right now, and I was hoping they'd come and make like a sneak appearance behind me or something. But if I rattle the fire, maybe they will.
Yeah. So
what people say?
Go ahead.
People say, "Oh, I could never do your job. I could never work there. I'd want to take them all home." And I don't, because I'm at work all day. I'm busy. I have a busy lifestyle. I travel and I'm constantly with events and things like that. So, my cats are like, when I leave, they're like, okay, well, great. Now we have our time by some other mother. But a cat, other pets, like I don't have the ability to provide the kind of care that I think a dog would need, because I'm gone a lot. So, it doesn't bother me to see the animals in our shelter because, first of all, I know the level of care they're receiving at my shelter. My staff is like second to none. I mean, they provide care and love to these animals as though they're their own pets, and so that, number one, makes this job a lot easier. And number two, we're a no-kill facility, meaning we don't euthanize animals based on the length of time they've been with us or due to a lack of space, which is kind of a rarity in our industry. There's not a lot of shelters that can afford to operate that way. And so, it means that when an animal comes into our care, it stays with us until it's adopted, which is awesome for the animal, but it means that our shelter is almost always full. Not on dogs so much right now, but on cats. We have like over 100 cats in our care right now.
Wow.
So when people call us and say, hey, I'm moving tomorrow and I can't take these 10 cats with me, can you take them? And we don't have room. I literally don't have a place to put them. And so that's the trade-off, for being a no-kill facility.
Well, what do you do in those situations when you have someone bringing a couple of stray cats or a stray dog and there's no room? So do you work with other humane societies, that are shouldered up to you?
So every shelter, all the shelters in our area and throughout the state are all independent of one another, and we're not part of any kind of national organization. So like, there's a lot of humane society shelters out there, like us, Humane Society of North Iowa. There's Humane Society of Northeast Iowa in Decorah, Humane Society of North Central Iowa in Fort Dodge. But we're all independent of one another, and we're not under like the Humane Society of the United States. We're not under their umbrella in any way. Okay. We just have a similar name. Like I could say I'm Chris Nelson Humane Society. You may not want me to use your name, but
if you want, that actually sounds pretty good.
Chris Nelson's Humane Society. But people like there's a lot of different organizations out there like ASPCA and HSUS. These are national organizations, but they're advocacy groups for the most part. They are not organizations that are operating shelters on a local level. And so all these shelters are independent of one another, and we all govern ourselves in different ways. We all have, as a nonprofits, we have a board of directors, and there are certain rules within the state, that guidelines of how we operate. But, everybody's independent of one another. But we do have, relationships with a lot of the shelters around the state. And so when people come to us with, a dire situation and we're not in a position to help, we do try to refer them to other shelters that might be able to help, or other resources or sanctuaries, and give them options. But again, we can't always solve every problem that's out there, unfortunately. And so as part of our, education and advocacy efforts, one of those too is, when you bring a pet into your life, you're making a commitment to that pet for the rest of their life. Cats can live to be 20 years old, or more. Certain breeds of dogs can be 15, 18 years old. When you get an animal and you adopt or buy or however you acquire a pet, you need to think about, is this something I can commit to for the rest of its life? And if not, can I make a backup plan of what I would do if I couldn't? And unfortunately, there's a lot of people will, get a cat or a dog or a puppy, and then, maybe their life circumstances change or something happens in their life, they can't keep it anymore, and they need to rehome it. And so we try to help out where we can, but we don't always have the ability to do so.
I even think about my circumstances. I have my dog Toby, who's a soft-coated Wheaten Terrier. He will be 11 in July. Sometimes I feel like I kind of want to drop him off somewhere. I'm kidding. Of course I'm kidding.
No.
I love this dog. I love him. I love my dog. He's actually in Green Bay by my son hanging out because I was in Illinois for a couple of days. But man, I can't imagine anyone giving up dogs. And I have family, I have friends. Some of them have done it. And I can't comprehend that, because I remember Toby. He's a little pup now. He's much bigger. He's about 50 pounds, and he's an interesting dog at times. But looking at you raising him, going from this big to where he is at now, and all the journeys that I've been on. I mean, he's family, and I just can't quite grasp the idea of some of these people just giving up.
Well,
that would be like giving up on your kids to me. I mean, of course, it's apples and oranges to a point, but a lot of us, we do treat our pets as our children. And there's just, to me, there's no room for letting your dog or your cat or any animal just kind of go if things are getting tough for you?
And absolutely, I agree with that. And, that's part of my staff and I were constantly trying to make sure we calibrate our emotions so we don't become jaded against humans, because humans let animals down a lot, and I have hundreds of animals a year to prove it, to show that. And, the number one reason why people release an animal to our shelter is because they're moving and can't take it with. And I think like you'd be in the same position I would. I'd rather be homeless. I'd rather live in a tent with my cats than give them up. Like I just wouldn't do that. But I know that sometimes people don't have that choice. Their circumstances change. Maybe they're going through a breakup or a divorce, or, some financial hardships, and circumstances change. And sometimes they don't have that choice. But, we've got plenty of stories over the years of people that are dumping their old dog off at the shelter and going out and buying a puppy, and that's kind of stuff that makes us like jaded. People that just, they get a puppy, but they don't give it any guidance or training. And then it's 8 months old and it's a rambunctious, out of control, wild little beast.
Walk the damn dog, right? Walk it, train it. That's on you. That is not on the dog. I just want to
know. But they don't see that. And so they say, this dog is junk. It's stupid. It can't learn a thing. And they dump it at the shelter. Well, the great thing is, again, it's easy to become jaded and angry, but thank God we're there, because these animals, they get a second chance because of us. And I still remember the guy who, he bought this like Springer Spaniel mix of a dog and as a puppy, and he wanted it to be a hunting dog. But, a hunting dog, especially, like, you really need to train it and guidance and fetching skills and, all those skills. And he gave it no training, and he didn't crate it. He didn't, house train it. He didn't even gun train it, like, for hunting. And then when it was like 8 months old, he's like, well, this dog is just untrainable and it's chewing up my leather couch. And
but did you tell him he's the dumbass, not the dog?
No, because I didn't want him to like get offended and not leave his dog with me. I wanted his dog. Like, I can find it a better situation than what he was providing. But he's like, well, I paid $1,200 for this dog and it's a piece of junk, and okay, well, never refer to an animal as a piece of junk. That's horrible.
Absolutely.
But I'm grateful to take your dog. Like, I will definitely find your dog a home where it's loved and valued and treated respectfully. And we did. We found it. Actually, a person at KNT, won't say who, but they adopted this dog. And I mean, he's a hunter, his new owner, and he trained this dog and gave it boundaries and skills. And this dog is living the most amazing life because it got the proper owner. And, people, there is no such thing as a bad dog, just bad owners, which is not nice to say, but
it's true.
Like, kind of like children, unruly, badly behaved children are the result of
bad parenting,
not being trained properly or raised properly with guidelines and rules. And that's what dogs need, and cats too, to an extent, even though cats kind of do their own thing. Yeah. But
cats and
anyway,
dogs, they're way different. Cats, you can kind of leave and they'll live their life, but dogs are just, I mean, if my dog was here, he would be sitting on my couch watching me. And then I go in the other room, he follows me. He'll whine. So he'll whine at the hallway at about 10 o'clock until I go to bed with him.
Well, they're dogs are so loyal to their owners, and, it's a bond that you just, unless you're a pet owner, you really can't explain it. You have to have a pet to understand it. And, some people bond with dogs more than cats. Some people bond with cats more than dogs. I'm an equal opportunity pet lover. I love all pets except reptiles. Not a huge fan.
I had a turtle once when I was in 3rd grade for about 6 months, but name was Emmett. And it was in this large box, and we just felt like we weren't giving it this great life. So we ended up finding this reptile lover that had other reptiles in its backyard and would keep it in the backyard, and then had, a reptile facility in his basement that he kept for winter. So Emmett probably had a fantastic life. Maybe Emmett's still living. We don't know.
Who knows? Who knows?
Sybil, final thoughts. We've been talking for almost 45 minutes.
I know. I got to go my beauty rest here. I got to go to bed.
I know. Final thoughts.
Just, Stay tuned to the Humane Society, because we're constantly evolving as an organization, and our goal is always to help animals and be there for them, to help them, and whatever the situations are. And things have been difficult these last 2 years, as they have for everybody, but we're getting our feet back underneath us. And again, our care of the animals has never wavered. So we appreciate the public's patience and support while we've pivoted our focus to the animals and their care. And we, again, are hoping in the coming weeks to be back open to the public and welcoming visitors and encouraging the adoption option, and being involved in the community again.
Where can they find you? Websites? I think I had the website up.
So yeah, our website's up right now. It's hsni.org. So HSNI is in Humane Society of North Iowa, and then .org. And our Facebook page, we have all of our animal profiles on there. All of our adoptable animals are listed on our website. Information about our shelter, and then that's probably this is why these kind of interviews are hard for me, because most interviews and pictures of me, I'm usually holding some adorable little puppy like that one with me in the Samoyeds. So people don't really pay attention to me, or what I look like or what I'm saying. They are just looking at my adorable animals.
Yep.
But we have lots of animal pictures on there, and stories and things like that. And then our Facebook page is just Humane Society of North Iowa. We have nearly 27,000 followers on that page. And so we share a lot of videos, pictures, memes, jokes, pet stuff, funny things, but educational information and just newsworthy things. And that's kind of a community where we try to, share a lot of information. And then we have an Instagram page as well. We struggle to manage all of these platforms. So, please subscribe and be a part of our world, but, help be patient with us as we grow.
Well, thank you for taking almost 47 minutes of your time. Get some beauty sleep. You look great.
You should have known I'm long-winded.
But I love that. That's why I said 20 to 30 minutes, because I knew between you and I talking, we would likely double that. And we didn't quite double it if we were looking at 30 minutes, but 20 minutes we definitely did. But good seeing you. I hope to. Yeah, I know you and I have been talking about maybe doing a little bit of work together, Nelson Media and you. So I'll be in touch, definitely.
That's awesome. I appreciate it. And thank you for this opportunity. It's been a lot of fun hanging out here at home and doing a chat. And, thanks again for your support too. I appreciate it.
You bet. Take care, Sybil.
Yep, you too. Thank you.
Bye-bye. So that was Sybil Soukup. She is the executive director in the Humane Society of North Iowa. Next week, I'm working on a couple of opportunities. Can't touch on it quite yet, but we're going to try to stick with the, nonprofits-ish type of thing. So, folks, take care and God bless.